What's going on, y'all? This is Sam Thory. Today we're starting a brand new project using just released Payload 3.0. And a lot of people are kind of putting Payload as a CMS or a headless CMS, but it's a lot more than that. Right on their front page there, it says the back end to build the modern web app. You can definitely use it just for a blog or a portfolio or something like that, but honestly, it can be a full app, back-end app. So it's pretty cool. I've just gotten started with it myself in the last couple of weeks. I've gone pretty deep on it, but there are going to be a lot of points where we get stuck and we have to hit some documentation. It's going to be different than some of my other videos where it's more scripted. This is more working with cursor back and forth to build this app out. And we've already started that process a little bit behind the scenes, and I'll show you through that. But just an overview of Payload. Essentially, if you think about like Sanity or Strappy or Contentful, one of these headless CMSs, you'll connect to that with an API, and they have their own dashboard where you're paying for that service. Sanity, Strappy, whatever, you're having to pay for that headless CMS. In this case, it's an open source library, essentially, that you're going to connect a database to. So you do need to host a database. To get started, though, there's a lot of options. I've been using Supabase a lot lately, but for this one, I'm going to use Neon. Neon, I think you get up to 10 projects free, whereas Supabase, you only get 2. So I've hit my limit with Supabase is free for now, so we'll go over to Neon. It's a little bit different. Neon doesn't have all of the features of Supabase yet. Supabase has its own auth built in and storage and all of these really cool things. Essentially, we're just going to be using Neon for database part. If there's any other pieces that we need, that's great. We've already started the project here. This is for our business, Raleigh AI Solutions. The name of the database is called Luminous. So this project that we're going to build is going to be an LMS, a learning management system. Think about learning management systems like Udemy would be a big example. Smaller ones may be for your company when you have to do security training that we all have to do every 3 months or a year. That's a learning management system platform where they have these set of videos where each company is its own tenant that has its own users that you're controlling the courses for. So that's basically what we're going to be building out. We as the owner will have total control. We'll have tenants, individual companies that build their own courses, and the courses are made up of modules. The modules are made up of lessons. The lessons have quizzes and assignments attached to them. There's a whole lot going on there, but we'll go through the whole project. So this is just our Neon dashboard here. We have our connection string, which we are going to need when we go ahead and run the Payload app script. So we'll use that in a moment. And I think we're good to go over to the code. So essentially what we have started right now is just a series of markdown files and a plant UML file. So plant UML file is going to be like a diagram essentially, but it's going to look like code from here. If I take this and go over, I think, let me see if I can find it. So we go over to this online server here, place this starter, drop in what we just had. Oh, did I not grab it? Oh, apologies. And that code gives us out this craziness, which we can, if we can move this out. Here we go. And I can hopefully scroll in on this. So we'll grab the PNG here and we can move in. So I did not create this plant UML file, just so you know. This was built with Cursor. Cursor built this file, and this file can output all of this for us, where we have our overall structure and outline of our database here with all of our fields that will go for each. So we have tenants as the overall. Tenants have settings. Tenants manage courses. Courses are enrolling courses. We also have some gamification that we're setting up. So a leaderboard, badges, streaks, let's see, achievements. We'll have points set up. We'll set up notifications. We'll have some collaboration set up at some point. Each individual user has student settings. So the students that are users have student settings. Actually, though, user can be an admin, teacher, or student. So we'll have student settings, we'll also have teacher settings. It's probably going to be the same. Support tickets, so they can create support tickets. You have certificates for courses. So this is linked to the courses, and users earn certificates. So you have this crazy map going on. It was really just built by Cursor for us to kind of visualize what's really going to go on in this database. And there's a lot. So you have here our enums, user role, as I was saying, admin, instructor, student, course status, publish status, submission status, point type, streak type. So this is great. Also, for Cursor's understanding, it now has all of this as context that it can read. It will understand this as well. So getting started with this, we were at ChatGPT first, and I fed it in the docs for Payload, and I asked it some suggestions for some projects that we could do. And I think the first one was just a blog. There are some other suggestions that were really great as well, but my partner and I have been talking about doing a learning management system for a while, so really made sense to go this way. So after we fleshed that out, I had it build me out ChatGPT, this outline where we go through the overview of the project, allows organizations to independently manage courses, lessons, users, and progress. Each tenant operates within an isolated environment, blah, blah. We have objectives, tenant features, student features, platform owner. So this is all very built out. I'll have this in GitHub as well, so you can take a look. But this was our starting document. So we took this over to Cursor, and I gave it to the composer feature in Cursor, and I had it start building out some documents to go further into depth and how that relates with the code and the docs for all these different products that we're going to use, Neon and Payload and Next.js specifically being the big ones. So from there, it built out two initially, the guide, where now we have it step-by-step guide code-wise on a broad overview. So we're not going into deep steps, but this is really just used by Cursor again to go into more depth. It's a good breakdown of each individual step that we're going to take. Again, I'll put this all in GitHub, and I'll share the link so that you guys have access to it. This is breaking down our project into essentially, I think, 9 phases, and we have 7 here, and then we went a little bit further with 8 and 9 just to expand on some of the next steps that we could do. So I have this guide now broken into some smaller pieces that we can then expand on. So I did that. I said I will start with phase 1 and build it out from there, and it did. Now this is all of the code and all the steps that we're going to run. So it has our initial setup of running create payload app at latest to get 3.0. We have some installation steps here. We're going to do some things to our Next.js, our next config, environment variables. I had to mess with this a little bit. So we're going to have that database URL, our payload secret, resend API. We're not going to get into that yet, but essentially we'll have an email notification setting or setup that will use resend. Resend's awesome. Upload thing, this may change. This was a suggestion by Cursor to use this for uploading documents. I'm not sure if I'm going to use that at all. I'm not sure what it is yet at this point, so we're not going to get to that at this point today. But we also have Stripe, so eventually, not essentially, we will be setting up Stripe for payments, obviously. Pusher, I have no idea what this is either. I think it is something in phase 8, so we're not there yet. Next public server URL, next public site name. So those are going to be like basically our base URL, and then whatever our site name is. I don't know why we need that, but sure. This gives us, we don't want this. I'm going to take this out because we are not going to use the SRC app. So our base is going to be LMS MVP, and then we have our database configuration. We'll have to go through step by step just to make sure that we're not doing anything that we don't need to be doing. But we'll get to that. So hopefully we can get through all of this in phase 1 today seamlessly. We'll see how it goes. And then we can move on to the other one in the next video. Let's see. So I'm not going to go through all of these files. This is another one that we do want to look at. This is defining all of our different collections in Payload, and that'll make more sense here in just a moment. But we'll see here, if I can shorten this, maybe not. We have our tenants, users, courses, modules, and these are all of our different fields in those. Lessons. We have some hooks that this is basically how the config looks with Payload to set up these lifecycle hooks before change, after change. There's several others that you can use as well. Quizzes, badges, achievement, I mean, we have everything here. So we have as much documentation as we can possibly have. And from there, I said, take that cursor and build out your own set of rules, your .cursor rules file, which is what it reads every time I prompt it. It's going to go through this file and make sure that everything is jiving with what it wants. I said, build it out in a way that will be readable for you, that makes sense, and is perfect for this project, so tailored for this project. And so when we went through here, we see we're using Next.js. Before we even get to that, you can take a look at the syntax that it chose, the format for this that it chose. Really looks like YAML in a lot of ways. Or very similar to YAML. It's very structured. We have our technologies here, front end, Next 15, because that's what Payload 3.0 uses. We're using Tailwind. For our UI, I talked a lot about this with cursor back and forth to make sure that we're using some animation libraries. I'm familiar with using, obviously, ShadCN, Asseternity, and Magic UI I've used in the past. I don't know this one, and I don't know this one. I'm familiar with this one. So we'll see when we get to that point. I'm not going to get to it today. This is more of setting up Payload's backend. We're going to use Nux for state, which will essentially rely on rel state, URL query params for state, more than client state as much as possible. So we want to avoid the client side as much as we possibly can within reason. There's going to be times where we have to use it. Forms, we're going to be using React Hook Forms, great. Validation Zod. Animation, again, we talked about this. I don't know what Legend App is or FormKit, but we'll see. So for the back end, we have Payload, obviously. ORM is going to be Drizzle, because that's what we'll work with. Is just out of the box, it uses Drizzle for Postgres connections. We're using Neon. To start off, we're just going to use Payload's auth out of the box. That'll be just username, password for now. That we'll use some JWT stuff. All of that we'll go into, but eventually we'll move that over to Clerk, and there's an integration with Neon that we can use for Clerk as well. So that's good. So if we have any AI connections, I think in phase 8 or 9, we start to add in some AI adaptive learning stuff. We're going to use Vercel's AI SDK as much as we can. Stripe, we said. Upload thing, we said we're not 100% sure. On real time, that's where Pusher comes in. And then resend as well. We talked about that. Going again all the way up to phase 9. We're using Sentry, Google Cloud for logging and OpenTelemetry, and Vercel Analytics if we want to set that up. We may have to pay for that. Although I'm not sure if the analytics is free with the Pro. So you can see it also has all these notes here that it's giving itself. Requires Next.js for optimal. Server actions are fully supported. App router, React server components are fully utilized. Nux provides URL-based state management compatible with RSC, React server components. So that's what I was talking about a little bit there. So then we have state management guides. Prefer server-side state management over client-side, as I was talking about. Again, we're just going through and defining all of this as much as we possibly can. Implementation, benefits, server state, client state, all of that. It's great. Now we're getting into specifics for our app, where we're defining what our collections are, the gamification part, the communication part, the settings part, our file structure, components, lib, types. So this is all very, very defined. Then we go through our coding standards. We use TypeScript strict mode, proper error handling, add comprehensive logging, document all public APIs, follow solid principles, use server components, implement proper data. I mean, we're going into deep depth here use Drizzle migrations. All of it is great. Security, implement proper authentication, use role-based access control, sanitize all inputs. Fantastic. Testing, write tests for critical paths, manage good test coverage, use proper test isolation, mock external dependencies. All fantastic. Now Cursor, just since the last time I used it, until yesterday, maybe the day before I did an update, added this where it has normal and agent. We're in Composer. I'm not sure if you can do, yeah, it's not for chat, but it is for Composer. With agent, we can take multiple steps where it's actually going to debug. It can actually control the terminal from within Composer. It's a huge update. But we're going to have a multi-agent development process that we do for every single step that we do. We have an architect, where this does system design and architecture, review and approve architectural decisions, ensure scalability and performance, maintain system consistency, plan data structures and relationships, and this will trigger on new feature proposal, architecture changes, performance optimization requests, database schema updates. So it's not going to trigger all the time. We have a developer, goes through all of these with triggers, reviewer, same, tester, and then security. So we define all of these roles for our multi-agent step in Cursor, and then we define a workflow where we're using these different agents. So we have an architect, review feature proposal, architecture decision document, state considerations, developer, requirements, reviewer is a code review and checks, tester, testing, requirements, security review, and the focus. So then we also have our steps for fixing bugs where we go developer, reviewer, tester. It's very structured how we go through all of these steps to build out the app, with relying on it as much as possible while giving it very, very strict guidelines. We have error handling where we're very strict in how we do this. Deployment guidelines for Cell, obviously. Database, we have Neon set up here. Security, performance metrics, optimization, commits. So this is our commit guidelines here. Feat, new feature, fix, bug fix, docs, documentation, style, code refactor. That's what we want it to look like. So when it makes a commit, that's what it will commit in when it runs the terminal to do that. Backup and recovery, good. We have our auth strategy, payload built in phase 1, and then phase 2. So it knows that it should have a path for updating to phase 2 at some point, which is great. It will future-proof that for us. Our UI patterns are defined. We're defining those same animation libraries and libraries that we were talking about earlier with different types of patterns. Floating, elements that float and respond to user interaction. Morphing, elements that transform and change shape. Micro interactions, small subtle animations that provide feedback. Scroll animations, very cool. Animation patterns, page and layout transition animations, implementations, page transitions, route changes, modal animations, list reordering. That's awesome. Feedback, what do we have here? Loading states with Lucid, success area animations with Sonair, I think it's Sonair if it's French. Progress indicators with ShadCN, notification toast with Magic UI. Here's our libraries and our user interaction animations. We can just keep going, but it's very, very detailed in what we're giving it every single time we prompt it. And this will allow us to move faster in that we don't have to say, okay, check these docs, check these docs, check these docs. Let's make sure that we don't do these things and we do these things. All of this is set. And we also have our multi-agent workflow, which is super cool. So we're ready to go. So the way I'm going to do this now, and there's just one thing I want to change here. I want to add flags to this if this is possible, just to make sure I don't get the SRC route or directory or anything like that. So I'm just going to talk to Composer real quick here. So I'm referencing phase 1. This is our markdown file for phase 1. On line 29, we want to add some flags. Specifically, we want to make sure that we don't have the src directory, and I'm asking if there are any others available that we might want to use. So you can see here, it's running this command right here, npx create payload app at latest -- help. Let's see what it does. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to run that. So it's trying to run right through it and get started with it. Why not? Proceed. So we can see now we're using 3.4. So they released 3.0.0, gosh, 2 weeks ago, and they're already up to 0.4. They made some big updates that probably were needed. There are probably some changes, breaking changes in there. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with this. And let's see what it did. What's -t? So I think we can take that. So let's do no src. And if we look up here, we want, let's do this. Let's use pnpm. Is that it? I don't see no src. So let's see how it does with that. We'll accept. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is just have it go through. Open up a brand new composer here. And I wanna make sure that I give it all of the necessary context that it can possibly have for this starting point. I'm gonna give it the outline, the guide, phases 1 through 9, and then we'll take it from there and say, I want you to go step by step through phase 1, through your multi-agent step. Check back with me before proceeding so we don't get too lost. We wanna make sure that we do hit this agents. And just if I hover over there, it says agent composers can use tools. So that's cool. So I'm going to go ahead and write this out, and then I'll explain what I'm writing. So what we've said here is that we're going to start working on our new project that's outlined at outline. There's an overall guide for the project at guide, and each phase is outlined phase 1 through 9. We're going to only be working on at phase 1 for now, and we want to just slowly go through the process step by step, checking with me often before proceeding. So we're on agent, we'll hit submit. We have all of these files loaded. We should be good to go. Let's see if it does the job. Oh, also one last thing. So I said root should be our current directory, LMS MVP, because we know it's going to go out and run the terminal and do everything for us. Also, just so you know here, I do have it talking to me as a persona from Cyberpunk right now. It gets kind of boring just to talk to the normal cursor voice all the time. So I also had it talking to me as a Jedi Master for a little while. That got a little weird. It actually turned into the dark side as we were going through our testing module and became a Sith Lord. It was concerning. But we got it back on the path of the light. And then we decided to move on to Cyberpunk, and it's getting even weirder now. But let's go ahead and see what we have right now. All right, so looks like we're setting up a pretty Nova LMS system here. Let's start with phase 1.1 project setup. First things first, I'll run that for you. Let me check that. Cool. So it was just trying to find what our current working directory is. We're in the right spot. Now let's initialize. We're going to make some choices here. Let's pop out this terminal here. There we go. So I'm doing Postgres. And okay, I gotta move this off because I do have my connection string, but y'all can't see it because it's got my password on it. All right, so I went ahead and put my connection string in. I gotta wait until it gets off screen. It says using pnpm because we did define that as one of the flags. It's installing dependencies. My connection string is still on the screen, so I cannot show you. There's nothing weird going on. I'm not doing anything special at all. What happened here, guy? So it made us a folder called no src, and we still have our src. I guess that's fine. We're gonna have to move it out of here. Let's see if it can help me out here. So I told it what it did, and I said, please don't do that. So it's gonna go ahead and remove everything. rm-rf no src. Let's see how we do. -- no src flag was wrong as we suspected, but we let it do it anyways. We actually do want the src directory for payload. Let's try again with the correct command. All right, so it looks like we're just gonna have to suck it up and use the src directory. It's not a big deal actually. So I ran that command. Let's see if I can control this. Let's see if I can get in there. Oh, cool. Thought I had to pop it out. I have to do this again. Sorry, y'all. Same thing. We're using pnpm, installing dependencies. Looks like everything's done, except for the fact that this just did not happen at all. So it never ran rm-rf no src. No, this doesn't exist. Delete. Get out of here. I want to just go away. So I guess we're just going to be stuck with that here. I don't know. That's fine. It doesn't exist. Also looks like our .getignores not picking up node modules now. Let's see here. No, that's fine. Whatever. Probably have to initiate it or something. Okay, so I think we're good now, other than the fact that we still have this and it's really annoying. So it's ready for me to move on. What we can take a look at here is what we get started with. So we need to just clean this up real quick. Let's make a docs folder. We're going to take this through this and move that here. Yup. Take this and this one? No. This one. And this one. We'll move those two. Much better. Close this up. We're good to go. Oh, and this one too. Sorry. So we don't need to know about the VS Code. That just sets this color, honestly, at the top. That's it. In our SRC, we have our app where we have payload in parentheses. So that's not actually a red route. It's more for organization. You can also have like different sections of your app that have different layouts that are encompassed by those directories. So in this case, this has its own layout. Very simple. Nothing really crazy going on here. We do have some stuff that comes out of the box here. I'll move this out of here, sorry. Handle server functions, cool. We have some SCSS going on. Admin, we have these segments. We have a page. This will be our home page, I guess. Sure. Import map, don't know. This sets up our different options to get into payload. Just some boilerplate that's coming with. We do have GraphQL if we want it, and a playground if we want it. We might mess with that at some point. And we have this payload.find collection users. This is just like an initial setup thing. So we have our collections here where we're starting out with media and users. Probably get rid of these. And we do actually have media and users, but they're going to be different than these. We have this all defined already. We have payload types, your user. This is great. So we'll probably tap into that. Media, same thing, because that'll handle it correctly, the right types. In our .config file, so we have our admin, user, users.slug, import map, collections. So we'll add collections here using our lexical editor plugin for the editor. We have our payload secret that will come from the .env, TypeScript, sure. Postgres adapter, this is good. Sharp for images. We can add other plugins here, which is really cool. We're not going to do that yet. But plugins allow us to do a ton of different things, especially for the lexical editor. There's a ton of things you can add for that. But just think about it as WYSIWYG features that you want to add or subtract from the admin dashboard. So everything looks good so far here. Let's go ahead and say you may proceed. Now it's going to run through and add radix, React icons, themes, CVA, CLSX, Tailwind merge, As Eternity, Magic UI, Vol, Sonair, CMDK. Cool. So let's run that in the terminal. Very cool. That's not what we want. So we'll skip that for now. Move on to these. Actually, same thing. I should have thought about that. For As Eternity and Magic UI, we're going to be installing those per component. There's no reason that we would have the overall package there. We're going to run these now. So it's taking us through phase one, step by step. Just as a reference, we are right here. Now it's moving on, doing date, FNS, Nanoid, Slugify. I feel like it was the other one. Date FNS, one of the two date packages is completely deprecated. I think date FNS is okay. I'm not sure. We'll see. Looks fine. All right, dependencies are installed. We're skipping Magic UI. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead, before we go any further, Going to our package.json, we're going to look at our scripts here that we have set up. We're going to run npm run dev. We're all started there. Come over here. Localhost. I have nothing there. Do I have an admin? This is our admin dashboard. We're going to create a user. Use my email there. We're in. So this is our initial setup for our dashboard of Payload CMS. We have those two collections that we were just talking about. Users. I am the first. And if we go back, media. So I can create new media here. And let's just drop something in just to see what's going on here. Probably have something. Sure. Add this here. Let's close this. Infrastructure for AI and control center for cloud services. So we have an image, a media. Let's go over to Neon and see what's going on there. Let's see, can I look at my tables? So magically, when we connected with Payload in Neon, it's going to set up a bunch of stuff initially for us. We have our users. I'm in there already. We have payload preferences, migrations, lock document, media. These are initial collections here, and we'll have relationships and all this stuff going on at the end of the day. But it's already started to set this up for us, and we're going to continue on. So everything's looking good. Go back over here. Sorry, I want to give you guys a seizure. Let's see what else we got going on. Nothing else yet in our payload project. So we're going to have to set up a lot of stuff. The other template that I worked on already had auth set up and Stripe, but these are very simple to add for payload. So let's just stick to the script though, and go back through. Don't worry about, so it's asking if we should worry about the Magic UI issue. About Magic UI, we'll install those component by component, same as shadcn and asseternity. You may proceed. So it's now going into our next config.mjs file here, and we're adding some stuff. We have experimental, React compiler false, domains, localhost. We're going to add our production domain there when we're ready. Ignore build errors false, ignore during builds false. So this is just our initial setup. We have our environment variables, so we don't have to worry about looking at these yet. We're not going to change anything yet to these. All right, so it looks like it's done what it needed to do. This directory, all right, Choomba. Let's set up our project structure according to phase1.md. I'll create the necessary directories. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and have it run that command. Something didn't work there. So it's going to do step by step. It's getting upset. Says let's do it the old school way. That didn't work. All right, let's see what we got here. Really struggled with that one, which is concerning for what it actually created. We have our underscore auth, nothing in there. Underscore dashboard, admin, API, and API. So this is a little bit off. Please check the directory structure again and note that we have payload folder directory. So we have our 3 different route groups here, auth, dashboard, payload. We have another API route. We also have this API route within payload. But we're hopefully not going to use API routes as much as we'll use server actions, but it's a fine setup. It's already set up in its own route, API routes directory for any necessary. So we move on to setting up the database configuration next. That'll involve setting up the Drizzle ORM with Neon, creating our initial schema, setting up migrations. Let's go. All right, where are you working here? Where's this db config file? libdb right here. I need to run this. I should be making a schema directory. I don't see it yet. There we go. And tenants. We don't have Drizzle Zod yet, so it's going to go ahead and run that. So you can see it's going through multiple steps here. We're interacting with it before it's finishing that step, like the overall step. This is a big change for Cursor. I don't know if everybody knows what's going on with this yet. Maybe they do, and I'm just not looking at it. So let's look at this drizzle.config file. Also need to take note here that we do have an error that we may need to feed it back in, but we'll see. I need to run this. Here's our drizzle.config. We're adding migration scripts to our package.json. We're going to go ahead and create our first migration. Run it again, because I know that was wrong. Wow, so it is going through an error loop right now. And let's see how it deals with this, because this could get weird. Wow, it got through it. That's okay. We had an issue with PrismaDB push, so now it's in a new error loop. Okay, it's going to try it again. Still has the loop. All right, we're adding TSX for some reason now. It's going to run the migration again. All good again. It's going back through, and it saw that it missed that max size, and it's fixing that. It needs to look at this Drizzle config. It's fixing that. Now it needs to run these again, and it's failing. Got through that. All right, finally finished its loop of errors, and honestly, that was a lot less painful than other loops of errors that I've dealt with Cursor, where you're having to go back and forth with it. It's not understanding what's fully going on in the terminal. That was way better. I don't know if it messed anything up, though, so we'll have to see about that. We have our Drizzle config here. Everything looks fine, so that's good. We'll accept. I'm actually going to accept the whole thing before I lose anything. So, fix the pool configuration, update Drizzle config, regenerated ran migrations. So now that we have that set up, we move on to setting up the authentication system. According to phase 1, we need to configure payload auth, set up the users collection, configure next auth integration. Would you like to tackle next? What would you like to tackle next? Or not using next auth. I don't know if I mentioned that in the docs. Let's see. So I just found a little issue with what was going on there. In our phase 1 doc that we have, we're still mentioning that we wanted to use next auth. We don't want to use next auth right off the bat. We're not really going to use it at all. We're going to use clerk down the road, but for now we're just using payload auth. So I needed to first update the phase 1 docs, so it takes that out and replaces it with what it needs. And then I told it to go ahead and proceed with the rest of the stuff that we're doing. So first and foremost, let's see if it actually did this change here. Oh, so it did users collections, and first is setting up the users, where it looks like we have some initial errors that we're going to have to work through. It did the media, which we already have, but I guess we're building it out more. Where is it putting this roles? No, roles.ts. Access roles. Interesting. So we need to add this. This payload doesn't have definitely type types. Let's fix that, the imports, and add proper type definitions. Cool. All right, so it's hitting up media again to fix these errors that it's seeing throughout. Let's go into the payload config. Oh my. We are doing a lot of stuff here. It's created a lot of errors so far. Let's see if it can find its way out. That's one. Really, that doesn't count, so. Okay, we're gonna generate types here. Oh gosh. Another error. Run it. Oh. So we have some serious errors here that it did not catch. So we're going to add this in here. We need to generate the payload types first, and we need to define our own user type. Until then, let's create a temporary type. That's going to move on to media. Good. All right. I think that got rid of some of the errors. Move on to this one. No. All right, so we're still stuck in an error loop here. And a lot of these are TypeScript errors that we're seeing with relation to the different types that we've created, where we now have media, student settings, tenants, users. We're seeing these errors here. We'll pnpm run dev. I'm going to kill this one. Now it's actually running my app here now. I don't know what it's able to do with that. We'll see. Okay, we're stuck in this loop still, y'all. I'm having to go out, searching GitHub issues, searching the payload docs, and try to figure out what's going on with this relation to field that it just continues to mess up. Appears that it may have gotten it right there, but now we have a new error. That's fine. And we're back to how it was. Somehow it fixed itself with that, but now we have this issue here. Used. No. So we have to check this because that doesn't even exist. We're clean on our media. Finally. Now let's check this guy. Hopefully it has gotten tired of doing this in a lazy way and is going to try to fix this correctly, but it looks like no, it's not. It's going to continue to do things incorrectly. Where it's creating new errors while fixing errors. That's very difficult to use. Sometimes you don't love AI. But look how much it's done for us already. It's love-hate. This is still way faster than doing it by hand. That's for sure. But we do need to be a little bit careful about what we have created so far. We've done quite a bit. We need to take a look at the admin dashboard and our Neon database to make sure everything's looking good at the end of the day. It is still working here. Again, we have this operation create issue going on here. So we're not ready to move on yet until we get this fixed. All right, looks like we finally got through the users one where we had indexes in there. We changed that to hooks, tried to do before operation. That didn't work, so now we're doing before validate. So we have some stuff going on there. We still have this, but we're not using that anymore, so let's take that out. And it looks like we are not error-free because we still have this error. We're getting closer. I'm just gonna have it run check errors on the roles file here just to make sure we have everything good to go here. Looks like just needed to make sure it was a string and we're good. So let's pop out our terminal, pnpm dev, see what we got going on here. So it looks like we have some kind of with the packages being inconsistent. So let's feed this back in over here. Looks like we have another error too, several. That's fine. Lots of stuff going on there that we need to fix. It's okay. Oh, I just tried to downgrade me to 2.0 to work with this bundler that it added. I'm not sure why it even has this bundler. So it's removing that now. I told it it tried to take me down to 2.0. I said do not do that. Let's make sure that we stay at 3.4.0 at all costs, because that's ridiculous. We have some updates to the payload config. We're going to run pnpm install one more time. Good there. Right, now let's run this one more time. Actually, we don't need to. Go back over here to 3000. Nope. Am I not running? Maybe I'm not. I'm not. You know what? Before doing this, that's fine. I was going to say we can run that in here, but it won't be able to navigate over to the admin page, and that's where we're going to see the errors. So we're finally in after some negotiation there. I'm going to create a new user here because we have a new setup and we have some new fields that we didn't have before. I am admin, Sam Thory. There are no existing, I don't need that. That's fine. That's cool. So apparently we have to do something with the avatars there. That's cool. So we have users, we have tenants. If we create a new tenant, let's see what we have. We have name, slug, light, dark theme. They can add their logo. What does this have? Create a new logo? That's cool. Student settings. It's not going to do anything yet because we don't have this, but let's see, we can change all of this, and new media stays the same as it was. So we have some stuff here. Let's accept everything. Make sure we add sharp. I don't know why. We already had that. So it's going through the email configuration in payload.config now. All right. Finally got through some errors here where we added our email transporter here. Oh no. Please be done. No. Dear Lord, y'all, I just suffered through that, but we did it. It seems, as is usual in this case, that when you have something brand new, Payload doesn't always get the correct docs. So it's sometimes pulling stuff from 2.0, sometimes pulling stuff from I don't even know where. What we need for the email adapter is, since we're using resend, it's the default from address, from name, and the API key. We haven't set up resend yet, so we don't have to worry about that yet, but it is all ready for us to go. I'm just going to check over here, make sure, we're not running anymore. Kill this, start up, come back over here. Looks like we're still in good shape. So let's take a look at our docs and see what else we may need to do. We seem to have done a lot. We're not doing next auth, media, tenants, tenant settings. Okay, so we've gone beyond. Let's do a couple of cleanup things. So we've done some serious cleanup on the phase 1 document that we started with. We have all of these steps done, some still in progress, core collections, obviously. taken out a lot of the code stuff that we don't actually use now. Or I'm sorry, we do use it, but we don't need to show it in this document now. Payload auth setup, media collection, tenants collection, settings collections, set up remaining collections, courses, modules, lessons, assignments, implement tenant isolation for file uploads. So those will be our next steps in the next video. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and get this up to GitHub. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna create a new repository. And we're gonna call this Lumen. Got the LMS in there. Myself the owner, and it's public so y'all can see it. And okay, so we have an existing repository. So we're gonna go ahead and run this one first. Do git add dot git commit -m. Let me just make sure I'm not committing node modules or anything like that, or my .env. Come on now, I think it should be okay. This will be our init commit. We'll push this up. Actually, should put that. Good. All right, well, we're all set up over here. So we pushed it up to our GitHub branch GitHub project Luminous. We have all of our files in here. We have our docs in here. Should be nice and easy to read because it's Markdown. You can follow along and go through all of this yourself if you want to. With these docs, you have the full setup for a project. So if you want to do this a completely different way, or you follow some of the groundwork that's in this UML and do it with completely different platform, that's totally cool, totally doable. But hopefully this is a nice starter walkthrough with Payload, getting it started, creating collections, seeing them in the admin dashboard, using the Payload config, also dealing with Cursor and some of the new features with Cursor, the agent and the multi-agent steps that we did with Cursor rules that seem to work pretty well. We came into some errors a couple times where it worked itself out instead of having to go back and forth from the terminal to deal with those. There are some other errors though with TypeScript that it still failed to pick up on the first try, second try, came back and did it again and again. And ultimately what it meant was that it just wasn't getting the documentation that it needed online, mostly because Payload's so brand new with Payload 3. So that's going to be it for this video though. I appreciate y'all watching. I know that was kind of long. Hopefully we'll be able to trim this down just so you get the nitty gritty of what you need, and maybe we'll break it into a couple of smaller videos as well for setting up Cursor rules and stuff like that. But thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time.